Guys. All right, we are going to do a very big trade review. I'm going to knock out all of today, yesterday, and the day before. So all 3 days of my options trades are going to be reviewed. And we're going to start with today, and then we'll just go back in time. Try to keep it fairly quick because it's hard to sit through a lot of talking for everyone involved. But we'll start with today's. Now, if we look at the pre-market analysis, you can see we're in pretty heavy demand on ES. However, on the bigger time frames, you can see that there's a clear kind of sketchy head and shoulders, not so much on the bigger time frames, but what we do have, there's a lot of higher lows. We have a lot of higher lows. We have a lot of pivots that can and may need to be swept. So as far as my pre-market analysis on ES, it's actually bearish despite all of this demand. NQ though, on the other hand, NQ's making lower lows, and NQ's bouncing out of demand. Now, we still have some decent pivots here on NQ. We have this, this, and this. While to the upside, we have this and this one up here, and then obviously high of day, or I mean all-time highs. So we have some things that we can go to. But as you can see right now, chopping down is typically bullish, and we are chopping down. We are making lower lows, bouncing, sweeping liquidity, all of those things. So it's kind of conflicting because I'm leaning bearish on ES and bullish on NQ. So this is the first candle of market open, and you can see that, okay, ES is clearly a lot stronger than NQ. Is this at 10% opacity? It is. It's really bright. It's kind of hard to see. Supply and demand doesn't really play an impact on my ES trading. I'm just going to leave it. It's kind of hard to see though. I'll turn the opacity briefly to like 5 so you guys can see it a little bit better. There you guys go. Okay, a little better. So you can see ES is going up, NQ is going down, ES strong, NQ weak. So yeah, that's kind of conflicting, right? Well, let's go to the next candle. That doesn't really tell me anything. And now ES seems to be actually flipping weak. This candle was a massive green candle on NQ, and keep in mind, I expect NQ to be strong because it's sweeping buy side liquidity, right? ES is not. ES has pretty much just been making, I mean, obviously this is kind of a sweep here, but as far as the major 15-minute points, it's been making higher lows. So on this candle, it looks like ES may be flipping weak. And you know what? If we invalidate this buying wick here, I'm willing to hop into puts. Now, I'm going to have to go half size because the risk reward isn't very good. And NQ's on a pivot, so it may want to bounce before continuing down. But that's kind of my plan. And this next candle does that. I fill at the close of this candle here only half size. Now, I'm actually looking for this kind of double pivot down here to break. You can see if we zoom out, especially on the bigger time frames, this kind of looks like a bear flag breaking to the downside, right? Or a huge kind of fractal head and shoulders. So that's what I'm looking for. But I am half size because the risk reward isn't that great. At the moment, it's looking great. Like when I entered this, the risk reward isn't that great, but the chart is looking great. Look how weak ES is. Look at NQ. NQ's fighting to go up while ES is dumping. So if NQ gets one red candle, it's going to look really good. Unfortunately, I entered this right at the end of this candle, and within a millisecond of me entering, this candle shot super green, and I was immediately red on the trade. So I told you guys don't even enter this trade unless that green candle validates. So most of you guys didn't even enter this trade that I entered because right when I entered it and alerted it, like a millisecond after the alert got sent out, it already shot up. Now, I was still going to give the chance to average down on it because, it could sweep sell side liquidity, and, I'm half size. So I just still decided to give it a chance, which was risky, but, I was okay doing it. And I did end up taking my ad on this candle here with this selling wick. Now, I entered initially at 2.25. I averaged down at, I believe it was 1.6. Or was it 1.7? No, it's 1.6. Average out on 1.6. That brought me to an average of roughly 1.9 on these contracts. Pretty cheap contracts. Hard stop loss, though, here. But you see the issue. Right after I entered this trade, ES flipped super strong, which ruined the entire thing. I got hornswoggled. It started going down fairly nicely. I said, such an unlucky start. ES is so incredibly strong. NQ looks solid for downside to my nearest yellow line, though, which would be this one right here. I said my dollar cost average is 1.9. I am dumping most of this position if NQ hits the yellow line. So the second NQ touches this yellow line, I'm out. Why? What has NQ been doing historically this morning and overnight? It's been making lower lows and bouncing, right? So I'm expecting it when it hits this pivot, which is derived from this major low. Price action is likely to sweep it and bounce. If NQ's dumping past low of day and ES has not even invalidated half of its bounce, what do you think ES is going to do when NQ bounces? It's going to shoot up, right? I'm holding a hand grenade without the pin in it right now, is what it feels like. And on this candle, I started selling. Boom. I actually made a little bit of money. It really does suck, though, how strong ES flipped. But there's nothing I can do. It's just super unlucky. That's all it is. I was expecting to enter here. Maybe I get like a little average down right here, something like that. But I truly was expecting NQ to make this fall and at least clear this yellow line. And by that time, if ES remained weak, I would have expected it to be down here, which is why my PT was there. But sometimes strength changes, and that's just what happens. Also, the contracts were choppy. So I pretty much sold the entire position here, -1, and I sold the rest on this little bounce. There you go. So starting out the day, very, very, very slight green because the puts got 2.1. My average is 1.9. I sold it at pretty much 1.95 and some at 2.0. So pretty much break even on the day. But now, ES has been strong this entire time, okay? This is a solid pivot up here. I will be triggered into calls if ES comes up to roughly here. And I already said I was liking SPX calls earlier. And I believe I actually did fill SPX calls right at the end of this candle at the start of the next candle. Yeah, never mind. I filled on this candle. I didn't get a very good average. Let me see where I filled. Yeah, right at the end of that green candle, going into the next candle, I did fill on those calls. And get a load of this. Just like the last trade, right, like immediately, right when I entered, it dumped the other direction. I'm like, are you serious? Are we going to have one of these mornings, really? Like, immediately, it dumped the other direction. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me right now? And of course, when NQ pulls back, now ES isn't super strong, because lately, when NQ was going down, ES was holding its ground. Not the case anymore. Look at this. How frustrating. The entire time I was in SPX puts, I needed ES to go down when NQ was going sideways or down. It wouldn't do it. ES was going up and holding its ground even when NQ was dumping. Now I finally switched to calls. Now it's going down and NQ's going up. Like, what is this luck? Super frustrating. I'm like, yeah, this is bad. So I said, now ES flipped weak. Insane luck this morning. It's looking like a red day is in the works. Impossible to make money with these strength changes. If I were to break my rules and take QQQ, I'd be looking much better. I did end up taking QQQ because I was able to dump my SPX trade here on this candle. I dumped the SPX trade minus a tiny runner position, which I ended up making like a whopping 12% on. And I filled QQQ calls on this candle. I made the switch. Now I'm just praying I don't get super unlucky again. But I have some nice pivots up here. You know, I got this trend line. We got potential, right? I have this trend line. You can bend it to here. I just drew both of them. And with how strong NQ was and how solid this bottom was, look at the volume spike. Look at the bullish engulfing This is a bullish engulfing on the 1 minute. You can see the green body is a little bit lower than the close of the red body. You can see the pivot sweep. This is set up. You can kind of make out almost like a falling wedge. Kind of. So I took the chance. I hopped in QQQ calls. Full size. And I'm kind of looking for the supply break. That's what I'm looking for. Filled my QQQ calls around 53 cents. Look at the difference. Look how much ES is moving. Look how much NQ is doing. By this point, I knew that my day may be saved because even though I got screwed over on the last 2 trades in a row, I wasn't red on the day because of it, because I strategically bailed out of both of them. So I'm actually green on the day right now, which doesn't feel like a green day because I got absolutely just steamrolled by ES with the strength changes. But it's feeling really good. And Q ends up getting to PT, and I'm like, you know, it's good for supply. ES gets this PT. I sold at this pivot right here, my SPX contract for like 12%. And look at it. Look at the difference. You can't make this up. It's beautiful. I was up 60% on my QQQ calls, and now I was extremely bullish for this high. Obviously, by this point, I have trimmed most of it, pretty much all of it. I only have the runner position left. But look at this pivot. Very nice pivot, multiple tests, lower highs right in this area. I am bullish for price action to break supply, and I thought it would get really nice bullish consolidation beforehand, but this candle makes it look like we're just going to cut right through supply like a hot knife through butter. So I'm thinking I'm going to miss out of calls. But we pull back. And I'm like, this is a prime opportunity. Now, at this point, I was really frustrated with ES. It was kind of on my shit list. I didn't want to trade SPX. But I did say, you know what? ES has been weak this entire time. It did properly sweep liquidity, which we sold the top, by the way. If we come down here, I'm willing to take a chance on SPX splits again. Or if NQ, invalidates this red candle, I will hop into QQQ calls again for this pivot. Here. See what happens. Almost did. Not quite yet. I need it to invalidate the selling wick. Filled on this candle. A little more than halfway up this candle in the last like 10 seconds, I filled right here. So I still have a tiny like 2 contract runner position for my previous QQQ calls, but I re-entered half size, technically slightly below half, but I labeled it as half size for new QQQ calls. My previous calls were the 566. These ones were the 567s. Only way I average down is if we make a lower low, sweep it, or if we pull back and invalidate that pullback to confirm a bull pennant, I will add there as well. And that would actually be more of an average up. That's the game plan. But look how close we are to PT. Really, my PT is just this. Just this pivot here. But I figure it's probably needed to supply. But just going to the pivot, the risk reward's pretty rough. It's bad, which is why I have to enter. I can't afford to wait long to enter because the risk reward is only going to get worse. But also I can't enter full size because of that. We get up, we sweep, we pull back. And I say, okay, if we invalidate this pullback, I will add. Now at this point, man, SPX puts look really good. But I'm already committed to QQQ. I don't enter multiple trades like that at once. Unless it's a very, very rare scenario. And I was not trusting ES enough for that. And I filled. Wait a minute. Was it this candle? I think I added on this candle. Yeah. No, I didn't. Not yet. I was waiting for it to invalidate this, fully invalidate this final red candle. All right. I just need one candle like this. Boom. Now I'm willing to get in. Because right now I ran a risk. The reason I didn't fill on that big green candle is because it was still a potential head and shoulders in supply. Wasn't willing to run that risk. Now, here's where I filled. At the close of this candle, going into the next candle, I filled. There you go. Boom. Now I entered this second trade initially at 42 cents. I filled my average up at 43 cents, so it wasn't too bad. And there it was. Hit PT perfectly, and I was done for the day after this. Pretty much sold everything here, except a tiny runner position. I sold that runner position after rejected. So on the new QQQ calls, I got 26% gains. On the tiny SPX trade, the calls that I left in there, 12%. The big trade though, the 566 calls, I got 87% gains. So today actually was a fairly bright green day. You know, I averaged 26% on the new calls. I averaged probably 60-ish% on the previous ones. It was a good day, and I avoided both the losses in the morning. Now, we did end up running later in the day, but I don't care about that because you guys know I only trade the first hour. But no, today went from really bad to really good. You know, it was looking really rough with ES, but it looks like it just kind of ended up being consolidation. We got a nice range break later in the day. So ES became way better later. As you can see, look at the market go. Look how strong ES is now. But this morning wasn't good at all. But all around, I mean, aside from the first 30 minutes, aside from the first hour of market open on ES, pretty much the rest of the day is pretty good to trade. So, does anyone have any questions regarding today's trades? If not, I will quickly jump to yesterday and we'll review yesterday. And keep in mind, yesterday was it wasn't a super easy day either. There was a lot of analysis that went down yesterday. Today I only traded for roughly 40 minutes or so. Wait, let me see. Yeah, like 40 minutes. Yesterday I traded a little bit longer than an hour. So feel free to ask questions. If not, we'll move on. No questions? All right, sweet. Let's jump to yesterday now. All right, so we're still at all-time highs on ES. NQ not so much. Quick pivots. We can label our pivots. You know, we'll just do it super quick. It's kind of the first thing I do each morning. Here, here. I do not like doing it on the 1 minute though. There's a lot down here on ES. Let's label the near ones. All right. So we're chopping up. I'm leaning mildly bearish on ES. Pretty neutral on NQ. If we invalidate most of this bounce, as you guys know, I'll take a momentum trade to liquidity, which is this pivot and then demand. Same thing on NQ. But NQ does have potential inverse head and shoulders. So if we do something like this on NQ, it is a great call trade to these pivots up here. So that's kind of what I'm looking for at market open. Let's see what happens. Let me go to my alert channel as well so I don't miss anything. Look at that. Well, there goes that put idea on ES. So continue waiting. Look at NQ, by the way. ES just decides it doesn't want to drop for some reason. And now I'm starting to lean pretty bearish on NQ to break all this demand. You know, we have this. Forgot this dropped so much yesterday morning. I don't remember because I wasn't in for it. That's probably why. Huge strength divergence. Now, my first trade yesterday was pretty unorthodox, I'm not going to lie. It's not something that I usually take on average. Oh, wait, never mind. What day am I thinking about that it was a second trade this day? Maybe not. I don't remember. My memory is all screwed up because I've been doing a lot of trading this week in the mornings. Anyways, is this the right day? This is Wednesday. No, this is not the right day. This is Wednesday. No, yes, I remember this. I took a very unorthodox trade today. All right, I guess we're going to Wednesday. Screw it, we're doing Wednesday, then we'll do Thursday after. Okay, so Wednesday, I didn't get any sleep last night. I pulled an all-nighter. I was busy working on the upcoming trade arena and a bunch of other things, and I just couldn't sleep. I don't know why. So I didn't sleep. Maybe that's a factor that went into my trading, and I don't think it affected too much. I did end up the day green. But this first trade is pretty unorthodox. So NQ was a lot weaker. It dumped into demand. But out of really heavy demand, it looked like it started flipping strong. You can see the reversal candle NQ bought in. You can see it starting to bounce. ES looks like it's bearishly consolidating. So I'm thinking personally, well, if ES can retains this weakness, and because of the lack of pivots it's swept, and this one's pretty minor, it doesn't really count in my book. If we can sweep the high of this selling wick and come back down, I think it's a pretty easy trade to take this as a scalp trade, as a scalp continuation trade to this yellow pivot here. That's kind of my idea. And that's kind of what happened. So we popped up. I'm like, all right, if we invalidate this green candle, I'll hop in. Because now you can clearly see that, okay, ES is weaker than NQ. And NQ missed this pivot down here. Now it's still far away, but I do like this pivot. And I think it's fairly likely to get there. Here's it going a little bit higher. Oh, wait. Did I fill on this candle? I did fill on this candle. I entered half size because it was kind of early. Oh, that's what it was. So usually I wait for the bounce to invalidate, but because of risk to reward reasons. When this selling wick got put in, I did get a worse fill. That I do remember. The selling wick was bigger, right? It kind of put in like a shooting star. It got the selling wick, then the candle flipped red. NQ put in a large selling wick. I hopped in a little bit early on the bounce, predicting that this bounce would be a dead cat bounce, mostly because of risk to reward, but also the volume spike plus selling wick we got on ES and NQ. But this was a half size trade, and I'm completely open to adding. Either I'm going to average up on it if we invalidate the bounce, or average down if we chop upwards. Well, we just magically shot up, if I remember correctly. Yeah, ES randomly decided to flip super strong. I was very tempted to stop out on this candle. Definitely not averaging down because this looks bullish. Like this is just pretty much a call entry. And NQ has invalidated majority of the selling wick. I'm bullish for NQ to at least get to here. It's looking like a stop loss right now, but I'm thinking about just keeping it half size. The only way I possibly average down is if this entire green candle invalidates and we come back to here. That's what happened. And I did end up adding my second half to this trade when the bounce invalidated. So yesterday morning was a really, really weird morning. Lots of really weird candles. And this was kind of the first one. The huge green candle wasn't weird because it happens. Things become bullish and people buy it, is what it is. I did not expect this. Because ES flipped super, super strong with this green candle. Wait. I guess I had two supply and demand indicators. It became super strong with this candle. And then this red candle just shows up and now ES is super weak. It's like, what the heck is going on here? Anyways, I did fill my second half on this trade. And my average, I actually filled it at 2.4. I entered the trade at 2.5. My average, it was actually slightly an average down because of contracts chopping. But yeah, it was crazy. So I trimmed a bunch here because it made it a lower low in a buying wick. And then this happened. Super weird. Like, all right, I'll take it. I was so surprised I made money on this trade. I thought for sure I was going to stop out. Like, genuinely, I thought I was going to stop out. So, very, very, very interesting that happened. But I took it though. 80% gains on most of my position that I've still entered. I didn't trim a bunch. I think I just trimmed a bit. I think I trimmed like roughly a third. Not quite a half, but probably a third of my position I trimmed when I made that lower low in demand because it didn't really confirm a bounce or anything. But 80% right out of the gate, random candle. Had no idea why I did that. I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty interesting. So now I'm like, okay, what do we have next? Well, we have this pivot down here at the bottom of this demand. I wasn't thinking this demand's going to break, wasn't even a possibility in my mind, but now it looks like the market's clearly dumping towards it, and it looks good to break. NQ, on the other hand, it's sweeping this pivot. This is the next one. We'll see what happens. If I get bearish consolidation, I'm able to re-enter and take it to the next demand. All right, we're bouncing. Still bouncing. Look how weak ES is, by the way. Look how weak ES is. This is beautiful. I actually entered puts on this candle. Now, looking back on it, that's definitely a ballsy trade to take. Not too bad on ES, given it invalidated most of the bounce. It missed a pivot, and it's a lot weaker than NQ. But still, looking back on it, this is a pretty ballsy trade. I'm not gonna lie. But anyways, I entered here. Looking for just this pivot, but realistically, I'm fine to get the lower low. I think I enter like right here, stop loss here, something like that. I don't really remember the exact parameters. ES made a lower low and bounce. I'm like, well, this one's probably gonna be red. I didn't enter this half size, by the way, so stop loss was pretty hard. But no, it hit PT. I'm like, okay, cool. And now at this point, you know, I was bearish for NQ to get low of day. But by this point, I had pretty much no position left. I had a tiny runner, and I believe I closed it after putting this reversal. Was it? No, not this candle. No, not this candle. This candle. There we go. Now the stars are aligned. Both ES and NQ have swept all the major pivots on my chart that are near. Okay, we swept this. NQ swept this. Looks good. We put in a huge volume spike. Look at the volume spikes on the way down. This one here and this one. We got to demand on ES. Now, NQ missed demand. That's something that kind of screwed me over because I was pretty bearish for NQ to get to demand. I can't pull up the 5-second chart, but I thought NQ was likely to get to demand. But regardless, you can see a really kind of sketchy falling wedge forming on NQ. I'm kind of down to put in a reversal trade, but I need it to invalidate a majority of this drop right here. Make sure my times are aligned. Yes, they are. Notice what happened now. ES flipped strong. NQ is now weaker. So if I were to enter calls, it would have to be SPX calls. I enter calls here. SPX calls. Now, my main PT was just this little high, right? Nothing crazy. Here's my stop loss. I did enter half size, though, because in my mind, there's still a decent chance that NQ gets demand. But here's kind of the trend line that I went with on NQ. Here's kind of the falling wedge. So ES is stronger than NQ. NQ is sweeping liquidity bullishly and putting in a falling wedge. I believe it's likely that NQ breaks the upside from this falling wedge. Maybe not to run very far, but the nice thing is because ES is so much stronger, at least at the moment, knock on wood, at least at the moment, ES is so much stronger than NQ that even just a temporary break to the upside on NQ would easily push ES to my profit. That's the grand plan. But I had to go half size because NQ may want to sweep demand, and I don't want my trade to be invalidated if that happens, right? So I got to leave room for that circumstance to play out. Now, with that being said, if ES does something like this, come up and do something like this, put in, you can kind of see like a really fractal inverse head and shoulders. That will be my average up scenario, where I add my second half at a higher price. You can see ES is still stronger. Look at it. It's beautiful. It's strong. Looks solid. And then this happens. I'm like, okay, this is my average down scenario. Now, ES fell a little bit too far. I didn't want ES to fall this far. I wanted it to chop down to form a right shoulder. But I liked the volume that I was seeing on NQ. I like the volume spike here. And I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take a chance. I'm going to average down on this trade because remember, I entered this trade half size to average down or average up. I'm going to average down on this trade once NQ sweeps demand. Because I'm looking for a double fake prophecy to play out, right? When you get a nice pattern, fake one way, fake the other way, go the original way, right? I'm hoping that the fake to the downside is enough to push it in demand. That's going to be my average down, and then I'll write it back up if it goes. If it keeps dropping, I'll stop out. No way it doesn't hit demand now, right? It's like putting in a baby bear pennant here. So waiting, finger on the trigger to average down. It misses it. And I am forced to add to my trade on this candle when the entire drop invalidates. I missed, well, I didn't miss. I couldn't average down because NQ missed demand. Very, very, very unlucky. And at this point, I was very bearish for NQ to get to demand. I don't remember if it did end up getting to demand ever. I think it did at the end of the day. But I pretty much said, I'm very bearish for NQ to get back to demand. Very bearish. And if at any point, hopefully I'm out of this trade by then. If at any point it comes back down, puts to demand or shorts to demand, would be a great trade. Obviously, I'll be done trading by that time. It's already been almost an hour. Long story short, we chopped around for a bit. My contracts chopped to hell. I pretty much sold here. Because contracts chopped so bad, I entered at 2.4. I averaged down at 2.25, even though it did come all the way back up above where I entered. Those contracts were at like 1.5 though, 1.6 there at the bottom. So that would have been a beautiful average down. This would have been a huge green trade if NQ didn't miss demand. Now, this trade was also pretty sketchy because NQ on the way up was forming this beautiful rising wedge. So I'm like, because that's worst case scenario. Now I have bearish bias that conflicts with my bullish sentiment here. So I was concerned that we're going to hit demand, it's going to stop me out, and then it's going to go up. Because in my mind, it's either going to go up then down or down then up, and down then up would absolutely screw me. Luckily, it went up, and then we broke to the downside. And I allowed myself to be triggered into puts for one last trade to give it a chance. Because so far today, every single hypothesis is played out to the T. The rising wedge played out beautiful. The falling wedge played out. The pivot's getting swept. Everything played out beautifully except NQ getting to demand. And this where I'm brought to my last trade. By the way, that last one made 20% gains. So pretty much 100% accuracy today. I don't think I took one loss. Yeah, first trade plus 80%. Second trade plus 42%. Third trade plus 20%. So we're doing great today. This is my final trade here. This right here is the final boss. So I filled puts. Full size. Great trade, great setup. 10 out of 10. We'll take it again. ES also got volume confirmation. ES also put in supply confirmation. It got the volume spike. It's getting the trend reversal. This looks damn good, and this looks like a pretty nice trend line. Is this perfect? Nah, it's not actually that nice. But ES also has supply confirmation. This looks great. Right after entry, boom, beautiful. I'm up like 25 or 30% right away. Looks great for PT. It's weaker than ES. And stop loss. I stopped out earlier, I believe. So that was unfortunate. I ended up losing roughly 22%. I lost 22% on the trade. Wait, I didn't stop out here. I don't think. Hang on. I stopped out here. Something right here. Selling what got invalidated, I think. Bless me. I think I stopped out right here. I don't know. I stopped out a little early because you know what? Chopping up is bearish. Okay, you can kind of see ES is putting in a possible head and shoulders. But NQ's chopping up a little steep. I said it looks like a short squeeze is coming. Sure enough, it did end up short squeezing. So my stop loss was pretty good. I don't remember if we ever came back down to that demand. Let me see. But that was my final trade. I ended with a 22% loss. I did put in the TA alert saying, I did call out the short squeeze, how it looked like a short squeeze was going to happen. No, it never came back to that demand. So great stop loss. And we did end up short squeezing. But now it was still a really good day. 3 solid wins, 1 loss. The 1 loss was a perfect entry. It dumped right after I entered it. There's nothing you can do. You just get unlucky sometimes. So, but aside from that, the analysis was flawless today. Which brings me to my last day, which was Thursday. Surprise to absolutely no one, it was another green day. Start the pre-market analysis. There we go. All right, what do we have? Immediately, what should jump out at you, especially if you have this beautiful supply and demand indicator? If you see price action reject the top of supply, that is a fantastic pivot. Look here on ES. Oh, we have rejected the top of supply. What's that mean? Oh, a perfect triple top. Boom. And we're already invalidating a majority of the move. If market was open right now, I would be in calls. In there like underwear. I have to be in. Very, very likely trade to play out. I can stop loss on that trade twice in a row, and I'd still be just as eager to get in that trade tomorrow if I had the opportunity. Now the NASDAQ, look how nice these pivots are up here. We have this one here, which is almost a perfect double top, like it barely missed. And then this one here. And then here you go. All right, those are the main pivots. Obviously, I have the ones down here. But I'm thinking just bullish, 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 bullish this morning. We shoot up. That freaking sucks because I can't get in because the risk reward's terrible. But then we drop. Okay, boom. We have a solid chance. If this drop invalidates, I am in there like underwear. It's going to look really good. Maybe I won't be super heavy, but I'll be in there. Starting to look really good. And I believe it was right at the end of this candle. Yeah. Right at the end of, I'm triggered in. ES invalidated a majority of this drop. Looks freaking great. So I'm triggered in. So as this candle closes and right as the next candle starts, I filled and alerted my SPX calls. Now I wasn't full size on this trade, but I wasn't really planning on averaging down. I'm not really sure why I wasn't full size. Maybe I was planning on averaging down. But just like today, so 2 days in a row this happened, just like today, within literally 1 second of me putting out the alert and 3 seconds of me entering the trade, I get this. Bang, we just drop. And ES slips super weak. Now, ES was strong and invalidated most of the drop, unlike NQ, but yeah. So my plans of adding went right out the window because it got invalidated so quickly. So none of you guys should have entered this trade. And I said right after I sent out the alert, oof, dumped right after I entered. This is a loss. Stopped out here at 2.0. We'll be back in if it comes back up. None of you guys should have entered that. Stopped out early into this candle right here. Was it this candle? Yeah, I stopped out early. I stopped out right here. I forgot how early I stopped out. So I stopped out early. Took a 20%. Wait, no. Entered 2.55. Sold it at 2.0. Yeah, roughly a 25. No, 20. Sorry, I'm bad at math right now. 20-ish percent loss, like 21% loss on this trade. Almost full size, not quite. But I'll be back in if it comes back up. I have to be back in if it comes back up. Now we do have PMI at 9:45 Eastern, 15 minutes after market open, exactly 9 minutes from the time I close this trade. And PMI typically does move the market, right? So it's getting kind of complicated because I want to be in for this supply break on ES, but also don't want to risk a bunch for PMI. We end up falling a bit more, but then we end up sweeping the low and coming back up. Not looking bad. Still a good stop loss. I mean, I think they dropped like 40% or 50% that I'm not holding through. But if we come back up, I have to be back in. Look at it. At the close of this candle, I filled. This is 1 minute. I filled exactly 1 minute before PMI release because I filled right when this candle closed. But I am properly triggered back in. This is the same trade that I just took. I have to take it again. But I did lighten up my size a bit because PMI was happening. And if price action confirmed it and we got up to here, I would personally average up. And that's what ended up happening. I got lucky. PMI ended up being bullish. Here, I averaged up on this candle and we got right to PT. It was beautiful. So, tried the first time, failed, tried again, succeeded, beautiful. I got 88% gains on that trade. And the thing about that trade, I got the alert did 88%. I averaged like 60-ish because I averaged up. So I had a smaller percent gain, but a bigger dollar gain, which is all that matters. But this was a huge trade because I didn't do any trimming. There was 0 trimming on this trade until my PT was hit on ES. 0 trimming whatsoever. That's how nice the price target was. I was up pretty heavy on that trade after I averaged up. I was heavier than full size. NQ, on the other hand, has a beautiful pivot right here. I'm very bullish for this pivot to break on NQ. It didn't happen, though. And I ended up having to stop out of my SP. Well, I sold my entire SPX, but NQ barely missed this pivot. I'm going to hide supply real quick so you can see it. There it is. Barely missed it. Now, I know we're in super heavy supply, but this is a really nice pivot, and we've already tested it once. And look, take your eyes back to ES. Look how much stronger ES is than NQ. This is beautiful. Beautiful setup. 10 out of 10. This is a great SPX call entry. I just need NQ to invalidate a little bit of this drop to just give an indication that it may try to come back up. I do believe I filled it actually right here. Yeah. So I re-entered SPX calls here. I filled really light though because I was betting against NQ's new trend. I was betting against supply. I said I'm 1/4 size because I just made a bunch of money on a solid trade. Here I am buying pretty much a high of day. NQ's rejecting supply. It's risky, but I thought it was really likely. But the risk, there's risk and then there's likelihood. It was too risky to be heavy. So the plan was I entered 1/4 size here. And NQ would bounce. And if it oscillated one more time, which I thought was likely because of how hard it's dropping, I would add my second quarter and bring this trade to a half-size trade. And that's the biggest trade would get. Looking back on this trade, though, I see why I entered here. I think I actually entered it like right here. It makes sense because ES was so much stronger than NQ. At the time, NQ was a green candle right here indicating a bounce, and ES has invalidated like half of this drop. It looked really likely, but unfortunately at the time of close for these candles, you can see that NQ didn't retain any of its green candle, like green body. It ended up filling red. ES turned into a doji. By the end of this candle, it didn't look nearly as good. So if it looked like this from start to finish of the candle, I wouldn't have entered here. I would have waited just a little bit, at least for this selling wick to invalidate. But that's not how the market trades. I did end up stopping out of it on this candle, halfway through this candle, which I was fine because I was in with 1/4 size trade. And even though I was willing to average down, I was planning on averaging down, the whole hypothesis is invalidated. I don't care if I'm able to average down 10 times on a trade because I only entered with one contract. If the hypothesis is fully invalidated, then I'm out. And that's what happened. I don't remember the percent loss I took on the trade. I think it was like a 25 or 30% loss. It was a bigger percent loss. I think it was like 30 something percent. Let me check. 30% loss is what it was. But keep in mind, I was only in 1/4 size, which means I only took like a 9% loss on that trade. Or less than that. Sorry, like an 8% loss. Very small loss. So I'm still pretty green on the day. But now I'm triggered into puts. I mean, NQ is super, super, super weak. I'll load back up a supply. So supply won the battle there, which is fine. By the way, still very bullish for these pivots to break. And I sent out a TA alert saying if at any point we get above 23,380, it's a great long trade to not only take to this pivot, but possibly to break all of supply. It'll look great by that time. But at this point, I'm pretty much triggered into QQQ puts. And that's what I did. I'm fully triggered into QQQ puts here. I don't remember where I filled. I filled somewhere towards the bottom of this candle. This was a super bearish candle. First PT is here. Second PT is here. So each of these levels are trim level. Boom, boom. I thought there was one more. No, there was not. Here's the trade. We bounced. That sucked. I did not want to bounce. This is not where my thing was here. My stop loss was roughly here. By the way, you can see like a potential like really sketchy head and shoulders. I was hoping that this right shoulder would be a lot smaller than this left one. I did enter QQQ. Did I not say half size? Because I entered at half size. Because, I mean, when you have a left shoulder and then you have a head and you're coming down, I will always take this trade. But I pretty much always, very rarely am I not half size. Because you have to anticipate a right shoulder forming. So when we bounced all the way up to VWAP, and right as we started rejecting VWAP, I did take my average down. I filled the trade initially at 57 cents. I took my ad at 48. It did get to like 40 cents flat or even 37 cents. I don't remember. It got down there. And now my hard stop loss was roughly here. After the next red candle, I moved it to formally right there after this candle right here. Look at the strength difference, by the way. Now, keep in mind, I'm very, 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 very bullish on ES, and this was an issue for me, and this, again, was conflicting analysis. ES so much stronger than NQ. It's invalidated most to drop. I am very bullish on ES to clear new high of day, and the problem is NQ's a lot weaker, but NQ's putting in reversal signals. You can see this lower low with a buying wick here on NQ. It's a sketchy situation, very sketchy situation, and I drew this trend line. I'm like, okay, even though it may not get to the first PT, if it gets that trend line, I'm trimming because I'm so bullish on ES. I think ES is going to drag it up. Well, we got to the trend line, and I did get a pretty nice trim. These contracts were at roughly 27% gains at the trend line. I filled at like 20% for my trim. And then this happens. We start bouncing up. I'm preparing to stop loss. And then this happens. Now, I didn't trim much at the trend line because not a single pivot was hit. I wish I did at the time because, put in that huge buying wick. But regardless, it was a perfect trim. And then this candle happens. When you see a random candle like this is news. This is fundamentals. This isn't because of the technicals. Most of the time. And if enough whales are selling to print a candle on the NASDAQ this big at a random time, what time is it? It's 7:09 my time. There will never be news at this time. Then they're selling for a reason. Sentiment has shifted in the market, and I actually held this trade because now I'm kind of bearish for ES to sweep this low. Because something changed in the market. I had no idea what it was. We did end up sweeping. I did trim, but I didn't close the entire position. And then we got to this demand. This ended up being a huge, huge trade. Got 107% gains on it. I sold my last runner on this bounce right here. Boom. Sold it right on this bounce. Now, ES flipped weak, but this was just luck. I don't know what moved the market down, but what wasn't luck is me deciding to hold my position and not just dump it right after this candle, right? Perfect psychology, perfect market reading. It was beautiful. So got 107%. So in recap, so far, the first trade was minus 20% right away. Re-entered that trade, got plus 88%. And then I re-entered calls again here because I'm very bullish. Took a minus 30% loss, but only on a quarter-sized position, very small position. And then I just got 107% trade. And now this kind of brings me to my final trade. ES misses this low, but NQ flips super strong. If we invalidate most of this drop on ES, I'm still very bullish for a new high of day. Like very bullish for a new high of day. And I actually traded overtime for this. NQ, beautiful trendline retest. Looks like it was putting in bullish consolidation. I would normally enter here. This would 100%. This candlestick formation, super bullish. This is always an entry for me, but I needed it to form higher, like up here, because a majority of the drop has not been invalidated yet. And I want to make sure that this fundamental stuff is over and the new trend is established. ES is barely at the 50%. Not much, though. Like, barely there. Not enough. Especially with it was a little bit weaker than NQ on this bounce, it looked like. And it missed this pivot. It was kind of sketchy to me, so I wanted to wait for it to be fairly confirmed. Not on this candle. Honestly, this candle is a fine entry because look, that's the bell for market close, by the way. Because look now, ES beautifully invalidating, or not invalidating, ES beautifully flipping strong here in comparison to NQ. I filled on this candle. Looks like bullish consolidation forming again. NQ is breaking out. The candle didn't end up closing good, so I didn't get a very good fill. But here was the final trade that I took. And saving buying power to average up or average down, I did end up averaging up. I was looking to average up around, 640650-ish, so right around up here. It was still kind of an early entry, and I was kind of betting against a possible rising wedge, which is why I went half size. But I believe that this wedge broke to the downside, it would just be a sweep and come back up. I did end up averaging up on this candle right here. So I'm full size. And just kind of grinded my way to PT. So very good. And it did end up continuing. Now I did send out TA that said I'm very bullish for NQ to get to these pivots. I didn't end up holding through it though because, I got a life. It did end up breaking the pivots though. I didn't see this extra test though. This is beautiful. These lower highs like this, if it comes back up, it's probably going to break right away. But anyways, on that last trade, that was a really big trade. And that was a beautiful inverse head and shoulders. And there you go. There's the break. And it should still break supply. Obviously, I know it did because this is yesterday. But that last trade ended up getting 112% gains. It didn't seem like too big of a trade because it was moving slow. But, I mean, I held it for a while, like all the way through up here. So 112% on that last trade. So last two trades were plus 107% is what the runners got to. And plus 112% is what the runners got to. And I hold that entire position. I didn't take a trim until I was up 50%, 60% on that whole trade right here. So very good trading days over the last couple of days. Got pretty unlucky during a couple of trades, but retained perfect psychology, perfect execution, good analysis. And I was lucky enough to make it out every single day green. So very happy with that. And that concludes my triple. Pray for my brain cells. I have like none left now, but that concludes my triple trade review from Wednesday, Thursday, and today, which is Friday of this week. Do any of you guys have any questions regarding anything I just talked about? SPX calls a 651 a continuation trade on a pivot. Are you talking about the previous day? No, it was pretty above a pivot, Rakai, and it was so much stronger than NQ, and NQ missed its pivot that I was willing to do it. But you're correct. Usually I don't take continuation trades on pivots. But keep in mind, the pivot is one reason why price action may go down, but I had three other reasons why it should go up, which greatly overshadows that one reason. Now, granted, I still lost on that trade, but it did end up coming back up, and I was able to take advantage of that. So, probability analysis. Yes, I am. I'll be uploading this review to my channel right now, Rakai, and I'll post a link to it right when I do, before it even finishes processing. But all right, so what do we have today? We have the quiz. We have a giveaway. And then I guess I'll do the lesson, even though I really don't want to because I just talked for an hour, but we'll do the lesson too. I'm going to need some time for the lesson though, so maybe an hour from now or so we'll do the lesson. We'll have to see. But all right, I will upload this. If I don't see you again for some crazy reason today, enjoy your weekend. Have a blessed rest of your guys' days, And we'll be back on Monday for hopefully, knock on wood, another bright green week. I will see you guys later.